So good afternoon. I am hoping all is hearing me. And I am Carolyn Trent Sandiford, and I am the UN75 dialogue facilitator. In terms of our little house rules, so to speak, we're going to ask you to keep your mic on mute for now. There will be times during the dialogue, which is expected to last about an hour or so, that we're going to ask you to unmute so that you can have a conversation. But in order to minimize all the background noise and so on and so forth, we'll ask you to keep your mic on mute. So once again, good afternoon. I'm Caroline. And welcome to this dialogue that is specifically organized for artists, because UN75 wants to hear the voice of artists in Belize, particularly because it's the UN 75th year, and we're looking at how every Belizean can participate in shaping Belize as well as the world for a better place. So together, we shape the future. We are all aware that currently Belize, as is the world, is confronted with many challenges. Those challenges can be confronting you individually, it can be within your community, both within your geographic sense, but also within the artistry community, arts and creative industry community, as well as for the country and, as we've said, for the world as a whole. We see issues related to the pandemic, COVID-19. We're seeing crime and violence. We're seeing disasters. And we see other issues and other concerns coming up at us. Shifting demographics, for example, climate change, the environment, gender inequality. And so there are many issues that are confronting us today. And so the idea of this dialogue and this space is to hear what are your issues and how your issues can be counted in terms of shaping the way forward between UN 75 and moving on to UN 100. Now, we should have with us Zana. I'm hopeful Zana is here already, because she's representing the United Nations and she will be giving us some opening remarks. Zana? I see her mic is still on mute, so I'm not sure, but we can continue if she's not coming on. Zana? Okay, she seemed to still be on mute. So let us continue the conversation, and when she steps in, she's going to give you the opening remarks from the United Nations. So today we want to talk about what are some of the key issues and challenges, the risks, things that you're seeing happening in your country, in your community. And when I say community, not just the communities where you live, but the artist community, the creative industry community. What are some of these issues that you see confronting us? Because one of the key questions that we want to answer in this dialogue is, what would be your recommendation for priority actions for the United Nations moving from now into the next 25 years into the UN 100. So we want to start talking a little then about issues, challenges, concerns, risks. What are some of your issues? And we'd like to hear from you. So at this point, I'm going to start asking if you can unmute your mic or you can put it in the chat. Unmuting the mic is quite okay. I know artists are not shy, so I have no doubt that artists has a lot to say. So we don't want you to be shy, but at the same time, if you feel that you don't want to unmute the mic, you can always put it in the chat. So what then would you as an artist speak to in terms of what you consider the immediate issues that are confronting us today, the immediate challenges that you are seeing confronting us today? What are they? And you can put them in the chat, like I said, or you can start the process by unmuting your mic. I am not seeing yet anyone on mic unmuted. Anybody want to start that conversation?
I think if I may.
Yes, and you are?
Sure. Yes, my name is Ella.
Okay, Ella, go right ahead.
I'm one of the co-directors of Heritage Education Network Belize. I just wanted to quickly say that I think one of the biggest issues that we come across is the career prospect in the arts. So we aim to support people and businesses in the creative, cultural, and tourism industries because we believe they are interconnected. But one of the biggest issues is the career prospects, I would say.
Okay.
Definitely. And then, of course, the ability to study arts, be that painting, art, drawing, live drawing, or the music, music schools, and any aspect of the arts in general. It's hard to have an opportunity to study. And then it's hard to have career prospects because I feel like in general, even though arts are all around us and define everything we do, it's not accepted as an appropriate career choice or not accepted as something serious, whereas it is actually really serious. So I think raising awareness to that is also
excellent. An excellent point. So you're talking about career as well as the educational component of the art. I see S. Darka, you have your mic on mute, your audio unmuted. Go right ahead. Hello. Hello, S. Darka. What does the S stand for?
Oh, that's my first name. I'm sorry. My name is Stephanie Darker.
Oh, okay, Stephanie.
Yes, and of course, I come here as an artist. I do singing and songwriting. Now, in my case, I can only provide from what I would experience on my side. So, like I would say, most of the issues that I realize sometimes I come across, especially when I try to broadcast to the public, it depends on. I feel like sometimes it depends on. It's hard to put it into words, but it's something. I believe it's something to do with like the different genres as well. Sometimes I feel like depending on what is currently in the mainstream, that's what the public would listen to, And there's not a slight sliver, or there's not really a door for other genres to come through,
Okay.
And it's a bit hard in that sense.
Okay, wonderful. Is there someone else who I think?
Yes, I would like to.
Hold on. Normally I would have Zana helping me here, but she hasn't linked on yet. So let me just make sure I have, and then I'm going to call the names that I see. The mic's on mute at this time. I see Kim. I see Jamuel. So I see Kim, then I see Jamuel, and then I see Ilona. So let's start with Kim, Jamuel, and then Ilona. So Kim?
Yeah, I wanted to reiterate what Ella said. I think that we have a critical need for opportunities for professional development. Even if you do not want to pursue an actual degree in one of the disciplines, one of the artistic disciplines, I see a body of artists that have a lot of raw talent, and some of them would like to also teach. And teaching is important. We need artist teachers because that is what's going to help us to continue to have a next generation of artists. But there is a need for them to be able to have professional development, whether it is workshops, and I'm not talking a day or two, I'm talking maybe a 2-week workshop, a 4-week workshop, something that they can build upon that body of knowledge that they have And I also want to say that I think we need more of a national platform for
Okay.
showcasing, we have it to some extent, but I think that we've had minor success with some festivals for adult artists, but we need more of that. We need to elevate on a national level, not just during September celebrations. Maybe we need to have a radio station or a radio program dedicated only to uplifting Belizean artists. Maybe we need to see more of them on TV. Maybe we need to be more bombarded, just as we are with foreign content. So we need to have that national showcase platform constantly. And artists need to be able to have that opportunity to perform. You know, like I said, I will use Christmas and September celebrations as an example. Everybody will want to book them during that time. And then what happens to the artists after that? And it's not only for music. Sometimes around September celebrations, we will want to haul out the writers, we will want to haul out the visual artists, and then we forget about them for the rest of the year. And so it has to be sustained. It has to be a year-round thing whereby we are constantly elevating and putting them in the public eye so that the public can develop a culture of appreciation for them.
Okay, that's a mouthful, Kim. You had me writing quite a lot there, but I think I got through with basically what you were saying, the whole issue of developing this talent, having a sustained approach, having platforms, continuously structured platforms in which the talent and the raw talent could be developed, but also where the talent gets the opportunity to throughout the year. And then we had Jemuel, I think. Yes, Jemuel, let's hear from you. And then Ilona.
Good afternoon. I must say it's really a privilege to be here. Let me just bring up the video. Can you see me?
Yes, we're seeing you.
Okay, awesome. I'm actually calling in as I am also at work. But outside of work, I am a poet, I'm a writer, I'm a published author. And I believe that it's very important for us. And I do like many of the points that Kim just made, because it is really important for us to have that continuous development. Myself, I stumbled basically into art as a way to express myself. And for the last 5 years, I would say, art has become a very big part of my life outside of my employment. And so I do believe that we need that further push for artists to come to the forefront. Like Kim said, they pull us up every now and then when there's an event, when there's a theme, and there's some type of movement, and they ask us to express our thoughts on that theme or whatsoever is going on. But then once that is over and set aside, we seem to be forgotten. So we do really need that continuity. We need that process. We do need that process. Myself, I do believe that I would love to further develop my writing and to see other writers develop and emerge into what it will become the global sphere of artists that are out there. In Belize, when it comes to the education, I don't see art per se at the forefront at our national university. I think that we need to address that because not everybody will be into math and English and science and all of that. We need artists. That is a fact. Artists give what makes life. It's like you're making a PB and J sandwich, but you don't have the jelly. You know, you're missing that key element that will make everything else come together. And that's what artists are, and that is what we need.
Excellent. Thank you, Jemuel. And now we go to Ilona. Ilona?
Hi, yeah, I'm here.
Okay, good.
Well, first of all, thank you for doing this for us. Well, I just wanted to add to what both Ella and Kim said, that when it comes to the development, it goes far beyond just having workshops for artists. There has to be a discussion on the career path that you could take within the art community that stems outside of you just being a visual or performance artist. I feel that that conversation has not been had ever. I'm saying that from experience because when I finished my studies and I was doing art, I quickly realized that as an artist, I can not only depend on my visual arts to support me, I need to get a job. And one of the biggest issue as an artist in Belize is you do not have a creative field to turn to. So a lot of the times as artists, we end up taking jobs that do not feed our artistic growth. That's how sometimes I'm not trying to be disrespectful. I have to speak on the reality of it. You'd find artists that start working in banks or they work this other job as an assistant or end up being a teacher. That does not help the creative or the art sector because we need development in things like museum education. That is an entire part of the cultural and artistic process that continuously gets overlooked. We need more curators, you need more exhibition designers. There's one thing that Belize does not have but constantly needs, which is conservators. Conservators are the ones that help preserve the artifacts that we have. Like, for example, in the National Art Collection, we have a bunch of paintings that needs to be conserved. We do not have a conservator, and no, watching one YouTube video on how to clean a painting does not make you a conservator at all. And another thing with being a conservator, if you've studied it and you are a good one, you are able to get contracted outside of Belize to other museums in the Caribbean that need help in that specific area. That also goes for curators. You don't always have to be a curator in Belize. You could go abroad. You could go within the other Caribbean to help develop the artistic narrative in the Caribbean. To me, those are some of the career paths that we could take up, but we do not have more institutions for it. So if there's no institution, then there's no need for it. And then when we don't have the need for it, then we can't develop it. That doesn't just go for museums and art galleries, but that is also for poetry, and that's also for film. I know we have the Belize Film Commission, but then is it going to be just that one building? We need multiple institutions that could sustain multiple films being developed all at once. You need some kind of institution that is going to be the forefront in Belize animation. Do we have that? No, we do not. So these to me are some of the things that are constantly being left out. Whenever we talk about developing Belize, we always talk about including the artists, which is nice, but we need more. There's more to art than just being the visual artist. There's the backside of it that needs to be created.
Excellent.
Yeah, that's it.
Wow, these are some great issues that you all are raising, and I think that we seem to now have Zana with us because I see a UN75 logo on our screen. So Zana, you're with us? Hello, Zana? All right, so she may or may not be with us. I'm not so sure. Oh, she is. I think I see her. Come on. Oh, okay. Are you with us, Zana?
Yes, I am. I just came off of a live that we did for UN Volunteers Day today. So sorry about my delay.
But no problem. We've started already, and we've been having some great conversations with the artists. Lots of issues have been raised regarding the state of art and the state of artists, the landscape in which the artists are engaged, from when it speaks to institutional and capacity building, the structured approach to how the talent can be best explored and supported, moving from one genre to another. So we've been doing a lot of conversation around all these key issues that they're saying that are challenges for the art community. So at this point in time, I'm going to ask Zana to do some opening remarks, and then we're going to go on to talking about some immediate priority actions that you as artists would want to see the United Nations address. Before that, though, I would also want to start hearing your thoughts on how some of the challenges that are confronting us today, what we call like the mega trends, the COVID-19 disasters. We've recently had some severe flooding in Belize, and with climate changes is expected to get worse. So we want to start hearing from you all as well. What's going to happen with the art community? How are you maintaining? How are you navigating this new landscape? And also, what needs to be done in order to bolster your capacity and your resilience through these challenging times? So at this point, I'm going to ask Zana to say a few words, and then we will start talking about immediate priority actions that you as artists would want to see the United Nations take on immediately in terms of preparing itself for its journey towards its 100 years. Zana?
Yes, Ms. Caroline, I'm here. Yes, thank you all for joining us on a Saturday. Really looking forward to this conversation. As myself, I dabble in communications, in graphic design, making videos, and just being a bit of a creative myself. And I really pushed for conversations with the artists, with songwriters, with all those artisanal persons that really wouldn't be invited into conversations like these. And it's time we expand that reach and get the voice of all of you. And what type of UN do you see yourself needing? We're marking our 75th anniversary this year. That's why we have the UN75 campaign. It's basically the United Nations igniting a people's debate. Launched by the Secretary General, it promises to be the largest and furthest reaching global conversation ever to build on the future we want. So it's not just for Belize, these conversations are happening worldwide, and it all filters into the UN75 survey, which we will share with you in the end. But it's to talk about everything from the climate crisis to population shifts to technology. What more actions do you need for your lives to be better? We realize that by 2045, the UN's 100th birthday, we really want to define how we're going to enhance our cooperation and enhance the lives that we now live. So for this, we have 3 big questions. What kind of future do we want to create? Are we on track? What action is needed to bridge the gap? So thank you again for joining this conversation. And I do hope it won't be our last, that it's the beginning of something new, and that we will continue this beyond 2020, beyond 2045 and onwards.
Thank you, Zana. That's some great opening remarks from the UN representative. And we needed to continue this conversation. Andre said he wanted to say something. So Andre, can you unmute and go right ahead?
Yes, can you hear me? I'm using a headphone mic.
We're hearing you loud and clear.
Great, thank you. So I'm coming at this from 2 approaches, one as a filmmaker and poet, but also a climate change researcher. So I'm always very much torn right now. Yeah, so if we're being real, and I've had the ear of a UN representative, studying that and being from Belize, I think one thing the UN needs to work on is facilitating migration from countries most heavily affected by climate change to the global north, which is the leading emitter of global emissions. So I'm saying that coming as a climate change researcher and knowing that based on the available scholarship that's out there, that we will definitely, more than likely, miss our 1.5 degree Celsius goal, and we will also more than likely miss our 2 Celsius goals, which means that life will be drastically different in just under a decade. So like, let's be real and let's like make that part of the narrative that us as artists disseminate in Belize, because things are very dire and they will only get more dire. And I do not see the government prioritizing this in the way that they should. They do that maybe right now in a branding sort of way, but it's not being pressed in an urgent manner. I don't see life being hospitable for most Belizeans in the near future. And I need that to be a conversation that's happening more often, not out of despair, but out of action. We need to be taking action to preserve lives in the near future. And to me, us as artists, we're storytellers, and we need to be actively engaged in that story, that things are pressing and it is not hopeless. We can organize and get ahead of this, but it is only through greater solidarity as a nation and as a region that we will actually achieve this. So that's what I wanted to share right then. I had other things I wanted to say, but that's I'll just leave it there.
Excellent. Thank you, Andrew. And I think the last point that you raised kind of resonate a little bit, where you say artists can be storytellers in a time when we have all these challenges confronting us. I recall when I was doing some work in terms of heritage, we talked about issues of, and I think Ilona brought this up, how with the change in weather, the change in climate, higher temperatures, flooding, how is it that you preserve your culture? How is it that you preserve the artwork? How do you carry through with the stories, the music, the poetry, the paintings? How do you all navigate this landscape, considering all that is happening? A simple issue like storytelling, when you start talking about migration and the movement of people from villages to cities and so on and so forth, how does artists move along these paths? So there are a lot of issues that we want to start talking about. And I think Zana raised the point that traditionally we don't get to hear from artists and to hear what are their key issues and also what can be some of the key solutions. So one of our first questions that we want to start asking, we want to do it in a polling way, because when we do it in a polling way, we start to see where the common threads are. So one of the first questions that we want to ask you is, if you were to advise I would say the government of Belize or the United Nations, so you're sitting down in front of the Secretary General of the United Nations, what would you say to them, having heard all your challenges that you all discussed, issues of institutional capacity building, issues of career pathways, issues of that there is no structured and sustained approach to sharing your craft, that there is no career pathway for you, that the art is seen as something that we pull out of a bag certain times of the year. But it is not only that aspect, there are the other aspects of the spaces, how you use spaces. I remember we were having a conversation as an urban planner. How do you create art spaces within urban communities, particularly areas that are suffering from blight and decay? How do you have artists come in and transform these spaces so that artists can have access and use the space? So there are a lot of issues that you all came up with. And now what I want you to do, and Zana is going to be putting in the chat a poll, and we are going to ask you what should be the immediate priority actions of the government of Belize and the United Nations to address these challenges that you just put forward. Because remember, we want to talk about priority. What can we do now? What needs to happen now? And then a little later, we are going to talk about what needs to happen in the future. because we are where we are today, and Zana say, what kind of future do we want to create? So whatever we do now is going to determine the future that we want to create. And then if we know where we are and where we want to go, then we need to start talking what needs to happen to get us there. So Zana has put in the polling question in the chat. And the question then is, what should be the immediate priority actions of the government of Belize and the United Nations? Let's see, I'm trying to move something here. Yes. What should be the immediate priority actions to address these challenges? So we're beginning to see issues that are already coming up at us. Remember, you highlighted quite a number of issues that you said challenges that are affecting your community in these times of changing climate, in these times of demographic changes, in these times of crime and violence, in these times of COVID-19, what it is that we need to do now. So we're seeing scholarships, indigenous sovereignty. I would want someone to explain that one to me. Food security. And if you don't, if you also wish, you can also put it in the chat as well, because we can read it in the chat. So it's doing it in the poll and also putting it in the chat. Okay, supporting art student, cultural preservation. Okay, these are jumping out at us. Anybody putting anything in the chat? All right, Ilona says she wants to speak, and Sandy said she wants to speak also. So as soon as we see a little bit more from you in the polling, remember the words that you put in. The more persons use the same word, the more it's going to jump out at us. So at this point in time, it seems many of you are talking about supporting art students. You want to see more cultural preservation. You want to see indigenous sovereignty, educational openings, health and wellness, migration access. Wow, these are some great immediate priority action. So those are great. So let me see. I think I asked the question, what was indigenous sovereignty? Andrea says, the right for indigenous nations to self-determine how they manage the lands they live on without intervention from the colonial nations they reside within. Ivory says, cultural preservation. Sandy says, grants or projects, especially for women and girls. Ilona, okay, we spoke about what Ilona and Sandy said before. So these are some great, let me see a little bit more: collaboration, career opportunities, networking, education. I see cultural preservation twice there. Scholarships, networking, scholarships again, wow. So these are great. So let's talk a little bit then from here, a little bit more from Sunday. You said you wanted to speak on something, and then Ivory said she wants to elaborate. So we're going to have Sunday first, and then we're going to have, let's see, Sunday, then we're going to have Ilona, and then Ivory, and then Musa. So Sunday, Ilona, Ivory, then Musa.
Okay, Carolyn, are you hearing me?
Yes, we're hearing you, Sunday.
Good afternoon, all. It's so good to be here. I'm grateful for this opportunity. Yes, and one of the major concerns that I know, well, I'm Sandy Bradshaw, and you will often hear about Sandy Bradshaw and friends. I think a lot of our young people here might be on Facebook. They might see us on Instagram, Twitter, etc. Right? One of the things, we have been engaged in a major trust since 2012. right? Promoting original music with various genres, particularly utilizing the genres here. Most of the songs are written here by us. So they are our experiences here. We normally do them by themes. And we have worked with so many young people from the various areas in the arts, right? One question that I would want to pose, and I really don't understand, and even some of my colleagues in the Caribbean who have seen the body of work that we have been putting out, I want to know if it is, if it is that the government thinks that if they don't lead or initiate a project, that it is not worthy of follow-up, of assisting, because we have been at it for many years. And, it's reached a point where you really dig and dig in your pocket until you can't dig anymore, right? And so I would like, all right, let me give you an example. In 2009, we did a project together. We built Belize. It was at a time when, if you remember, 2009, the country was in a very depressed state. The roads were just horrible. And I was asked by a member of City Council, could you please write a song to uplift the country? And there is an individual who was so impressed with what we were doing that she gave $10,000 to the project, and everything was accounted for. We did it. We handed it to Niche. As a matter of fact, the day they were honoring Andy Palazzo, it was after he had passed. And I went there, and one of the persons there said to me, so that project follow what, bottom? And I had the CD right there, ready to give the person. No promotion. It's one of my good friends, Mark Phillips, who plays with us from time to time. He utilizes it with his students every year because it covers, if you want to teach your children about the first Black millionaire that Belize had, Isaiah Morta's statue is right there. If you want it to be non-political, you will see George Price and you will see the members from the other side too, right? And it highlights people from different cultures. Recently, let's come forward now. Recently, we moved online, right? With COVID, we have not stopped. And when I was doing one to honor the Governor General and for the September celebrations, and while I was interviewing Lynn on behalf of his father in preparation, you remember Nana was coming. And so he said, man, you should write a song, which I did while the hurricane was going on. I hear you talking about climate. I contacted about 40 odd persons in that project, right? And it came out, it was a successful thing. It incorporated every major language at a point in the song in Belize. So it could be used for tourism, it could be used for history, it could be used for culture. And then you hear everybody, oh, we like it. And that's it.
I think it goes back to the point that Ilona raised a little earlier, and I think Kim as well raised, the whole sustained approach.
Yes, yes.
And not only sustained approach, an enabling environment.
Right,
so that
right.
they think, like, for example, what the work that you all have done, which is linked to some of the very key issues that are confronting us. So you're able to merge art in terms of addressing how we address our developmental challenges, but it doesn't have the kind of support. And I think that's a key issue. Then we have, I think Kirkland hasn't spoken yet. So Kirkland, let us hear from you. And then we're going to go to Ilona and Ivory. And I think Saidi as well. I have Saidi as well who hasn't spoken yet. So I'd like to hear from Kirkland. And then we go.
Miss Caroline, I would just like all those who would like to speak, please unmute your mic at this moment, and I'll take the list, because what's going to happen is you'd want to join in mid-conversations and we might be stuck on point 1. when we have about, 7 other points. So if I have your list of names of the persons that would like to speak now, then it would be easy just to call out, and then we can move on to the other points.
Great. So right now we have then Kirkland.
Good afternoon. I'm right here.
All right. So Kirkland, that's you?
Yes, this is me. I'm an art educator. I've been, I think, as an art teacher, I've been in the classroom for 20+ years, and I think to address some of the concerns that I agree with all those here, and I'm glad for this platform. I think one of the main things that the government, if in collaboration with the UN, should do is to have a serious integration of art in education. Art is not seriously taught in our schools. I can go through all the schools. We have about 60 high schools, and from one hand, I can tell you how many schools have an art program with an art teacher. And we need to target the students if we want to address these issues and plan for the future, what we would want, the direction that we want to go as an art community, as a nation. Then we need to teach art to our preschool students. And then when they reach primary school, they are taught art throughout high school up to tertiary level. The exposure is important because then the exposure in the classroom make them become more aware of the importance of art and impact of art on their lives and in their community. So then, in that way, when these toddlers, these infants and these children get old like us, then we'll accept the role of art in community and the importance of artists in the community. And in that way, we can have a huge network, more collaboration, and more sponsorship in that era, because then these are the future, and these children, they'll have more students, more children exposed. So if we can target them education, then I think we can have a big change in terms of the attitude our society has to art.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you. So we're talking about art in education. The next person we have is Sadie. Sadie. Okay, Sadie. Go right ahead.
All right. Well, actually, everyone provided useful information on the challenges. And I think one of the things that Kirkland just said, it's important. But what I would like to see, and I suppose it's because I wear so many hats in the arts and outside of the arts in terms of management as well, I would probably like to see a workable strategic plan by the government, by other organizations that is geared only to the arts. To make these things look actionable, you need a strategic plan. You cannot move from point A to B without an actionable, a realistic plan. So I start with that. The next thing I would probably put forward is that as an art gallery owner who opened up as soon as we got locked down for COVID, what I saw from the artists was, one, artists are extremely emotional people, and many of them went straight into creation. Some of them went into a shell and then came back out to begin to create again. But COVID really had an impact on the arts, because if we look at first the visual arts, you cannot appreciate a painting without really seeing it. You can't, and if you can't see it, then there is no real appreciation, it's just a photo. So that impacted a lot of artists in that people weren't there to appreciate their pieces. And I feel like what needed to be done was that even though everyone was battling with self-preservation, maybe for the future we look at how to innovate the art community. Innovate meaning to add technology to it so that we can sustain it and ensure that it's survivable in the next 20 years. Everything needs to innovate, and I think in terms of the arts, that as well needs to innovate. I saw Encroy doing online classes. I saw Dance doing online classes in terms of dance, and I'm a dancer as well. And I appreciated that the effort towards bringing things virtual. Another aspect is that to build upon what someone else said in terms of artists only coming out for events, even though Belize has niche, there is no consistency in the promotion of the arts. And in that actionable plan, there needs to be a consistency in how the arts are promoted, and it should be consistent across the board. When I say the arts, I'm saying visual, dance, poetry, everything. There is no consistency in it. So in terms of what Kirkland said, the education part, why isn't there, with all the talent that Belize has, an art school?
Yeah, okay.
Why isn't there an art school here in Belize? Even though you have 400,000 odd people, I guarantee, and I say this from experience, there are young people there who have the talent and they need that nurturing, they need that guidance. Many of our artists are self-taught, but they've gotten to a point where they can't teach. Okay. Some of them can't teach. I mean, their teachers are, you're born to teach, but why isn't there an art school? So in that plan, in the next maybe 10 to 15 years, establish a school of art in Belize, right? So those are just some of my points.
All right, thanks a lot. So we have Ilona, Ivory, and Musa, and then just as some of the issues we are talking about, we will then move to what we would say the future, 2045. And based on all that you're saying, we've spoken on some immediate priorities. We then want to start to talk about some future priorities. So before we reach there, which we'll have another poll to look at, we want to hear from Ilona, from Ivory, and from Musa. So Ilona?
Hi, yes. One of the things that I would really love for the UN to help with would be to put pressure on other institutions outside of Belize to help with to help with collaboration, because it's one thing for our government to create these programs, but then it's another when we want to go outside and we are unable to go outside. So for example, if we create an art school and they graduate high school with their art degree, where are they going to go to study, to further their studies? The UN should be able to put pressure on other institutions, especially institutions that have our own artifacts that were stolen and they refuse to give it back to us. These are the institutions that we should be allowed to access. That's the word that I'm looking for. It's the lack of access and opportunity that we have outside of Belize that would encourage us to develop our knowledge within the art and cultural ecosystem. That has always been one of the major issues when it comes to getting exposure for our artists. Speaking from experience, one of the biggest issues we have when I am trying to get an artist from Belize to another country is the fact that we do not have funding to take the paintings outside. It's not as simple as putting the paintings in my suitcase and going along my way. That has to be insured from Belize and to the country that I am going to. Not only that, but sometimes if I want an artist to participate in an exhibition, I have to pay so much thousands of dollars, and that is US dollars, to be included in that gallery. We are not even generating that amount of money. So, I mean, This is why we do not have the opportunity to get exposure, because we don't have access to these institutions. So like, for example, not just with the visual arts, but going back to conservation and the study of artifacts in order to help us preserve our history, the Mayan history, Garifuna culture, all of that. If we could create some kind of connection between some of these museums that house our artifacts and refuse to give it back to us, that would be great, because that would generate the interest, that would generate the growth. For example, I spoke to, I won't say the name, but I spoke to someone who works at a museum that has some of our Belizean artifacts. We asked them why we can't get it back, and the truth is, if we do get back those artifacts, where will it go? We do not have a conservation building. We do not have the proper facility. A part of the issue why a lot of Caribbean countries are unable to get back or retain their artifacts is because these big museums claim that we do not have the proper facility, but yet they refuse us in that space to gather the knowledge that we could build up and create our own facility. So I would love for the UN to put pressure on these institutions to open up their doors to us. Not just big institutions, but also big art galleries. It's always nice to have the Caribbean artists there, but then when it's going to cost me 40,000 US dollars just to ship my painting, I'm missing out on that opportunity because we do not have 80,000 Belize dollars to ship paintings over there. So I hope that makes sense.
Great points, great points. Yes. And I think I want you to hold those thoughts, so when we talk about the UN being vital for cooperation between countries and sectors, because that will be one of the final in the latter part of this dialogue. We are going to bring up what would be the role of the UN, and I think that point I want you to hold. Okay. Ivory, then Musa, and then we have one final from Patricia, and we close this, and then we go into talking about 2045 and whether as artists you see the art world and Belize and the global community the same as it is today, whether it's going to be worse off or better off, you will guide us on that point. But until then, we have Ivory, then Musa, then Patricia, and then we move to our other polling question on 2045. Ivory?
Yes, thank you very much, Caroline. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, loud and clear.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. And it is wonderful to see a lot of my colleagues and friends and to get to know others in the artistic community. Who I anticipate having the pleasure of meeting sometime soon in the real world. But I'm speaking in my capacity as a creative writer, specifically a writer of fiction. I do also teach at the University of Belize, but I can share some of my insights as a teacher of creative writing at UB. But what I want to focus on immediately is to suggest one way in which the UN can assist in cultural preservation, particularly the preservation of our indigenous languages, of our national languages in Belize, is to help to support our governments and our institutions to produce, to create the enabling environment and the tools that will assist us in producing a robust body of literature in all our indigenous languages. I think it was last year I read an article published by the United Nations in which they reported that every day indigenous languages are in danger of becoming extinct throughout the world. I think more than 2,000, between 2,000 and 3,000 indigenous languages throughout the world are in danger of becoming extinct every day. And one of the main factors that contribute to the threat to extinction of languages is when our languages are not used widely in written form. And as such, all of our heritage languages or our so-called mother tongues in Belize are at risk of becoming extinct, because by and large in Belize, with the exception of, say, of English and Spanish, most of our national languages are primarily used in oral forms and not sufficiently written down. And so those of you who are familiar with my writings of recent will know that I have sort of taken up as a mantle, one of my main advocacy areas is to work with whomever is willing to collaborate on efforts toward creating, like I said, a robust body of literature in all our mother tongues. So in the Belizean literary landscape, I think that we need to be thinking not just multiculturalism, but also multilingualism in our literacy. And so to publish works in English and Creole, in English and Spanish, Garifuna, Quechua, Mopan, all of our languages. And so that is a priority area that I would really like to see the United Nations in collaboration with our government work toward. And then yeah, and then also really quickly, a part of that is, as a lot of my colleagues have said before, that enabling environment that our government has to create. And I'm echoing, for example, Sandy Bradshaw just now talking about that enabling environment. We talk a lot about, you know, buy in Belize, you know, and that also has to apply to our artistic products. And so in Belize, for example, in our schools, at the university where I teach, in all our primary, secondary schools, in our schools, we consume vast amounts of literature, but you know, a minute percentage of the literature that we consume are Belizean literature. And not because our literary outputs at this point, not only because our literary outputs at this point are minimal, but largely because I think we have not made a conscious effort to utilize what we produce and to procure our Belizean literature and other art forms and use them in academia, use them at all levels of our schooling. And so that's another area where I would like to see priority coming as yes. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Ivory. Those are some great points. Musa, I think we'll be hearing from Musa for the first time. Musa? Hello, Musa? Are you still with us? Okay, he may have slipped off. Patricia? Patricia?
Hi. Yes, hi.
Right.
My name is Patricia George, and I am coming to the conversation as a music teacher and a dance teacher here in Belmopan. I run a dance studio, and I'm also work with Arlo Music here in Belmopan. I think this is an awesome conversation, so I thank you guys for inviting me. I know that some of our personal challenges over the years that we've seen has had to do with things that have already, you know, been mentioned, but the ability to see the arts as a viable career choice past a certain point. I think many parents try to expose their kids to lessons or get them involved in some way up to a certain point, but then we find after a certain point that they, you know, we lose students when they're, you know, taking their PSE or, you know, after that phase. And so I would say something that we could look at is how to support students in their training after that point, you know, and providing that clear career path forward. Where do you go from here? Is it just something fun to do when you're little? you know, like, and celebrating these things and making it, providing the avenues for it to be celebrated and the avenues forward if they want to go take their education further past Belize. How do they do that? You know, what are the connections that they could do? Are there scholarships available? And so those are just things that I've noticed over the years. So
excellent. I think we keep hearing a lot about the whole issue of moving the arts from simply being something that you may do on the side or do in addition to making it a full career choice and the pathway from school to career, and not only nationally but regionally and globally, but in all, and I should say not, but and in all facets of art. And I think that is what keeps coming out. Musa, you wanted to say something. I think you told me you're back up. Musa? Hello? Musa? Hello? Musa? Okay, Crystal, you said you wanted to say something. Okay, go right ahead.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone.
Yeah, Musa wasn't answering, so.
Yes. Further to what Miss George and Miss Kim and a lot of us have been mentioning about the career aspects, I also think that, I mean, before we even get to the point, because maybe that would be like 5-10 years from now before we actually have an actual institution for the arts. Further to what they were saying about having the arts in the schools, it is in the curriculum, but it hasn't been enforced. And then further to that, they are requiring teachers who have no interest or who are not really trained in the arts, and they're forcing them to give a dance lesson or to give a music lesson or to give an art lesson. And how is that going to benefit the student if they have no prior knowledge or they don't have any experience in that? So before we get there, why not take the same artists that are already exposed, that have already been trained, and put them in different schools as itinerant teachers, the same way they have the literacy teacher that's not exactly in just one classroom, but you know, provides information throughout the entire school. Why not have the artists from an arts teacher, a dance teacher, a music teacher go into the schools and facilitate the learning? I mean, art is our cultural identity. That's who we are as a country, and in order for us to preserve it, why not have the ones that are actually embedded in it give that information to the schools? And by doing that, maybe we could also train some more teachers to know exactly what they're doing before they give away that information. So that's a step into having it as a career, because we're not just doing it on our own for ourselves, or just trying to keep our studio running by, you know, that's our way of life. But it's doing more by providing it to, like you said, from preschool all the way up. What are they gonna do when they finish? I lose a lot of students from PSC, from CXC, and after that, when they get to sixth form, it's like, well, they're done with it. It's just a hobby. But what if we actually had niche as a company whereby every so often they put off a show that includes musicians, includes visual artists, includes dancers, that like a national team, or you know, that they're used to showcase Belizean talent, and not just the talent that we have. We could also have the cultural aspect being heavy, as in your Creole, your Garifuna, the same Mayan in terms of the dialect, in terms of the dances that they do, how can we preserve it if we're not teaching it, if we're not showing it to the students, if we're not showcasing it? Because I dance Creole dancing, yes, I teach other styles, but how many people actually know what a jukan fall is? Or how many people actually know how to sedunga? I mean, if we're not teaching it and keeping it going and having them identify, oh, I know that move, or that's from this culture, that's from that culture, how else will we keep preserving it? It's just like the language. For the language, we have it in writing. So you can look at the Creole dictionary, you can find some words, and that's a way of preserving. But then what about the actual action part of it?
Yeah.
You know, seeing it come alive. How do we keep on preserving it through that? You know, so I think that I'd like to see more investment in these types of documenting or preserving of our culture, as well as promoting what it is that we artists are doing, and pushing us into different schools, into different avenues to boost our careers also, before we get to the level that we have, okay, this big institution and we can now tell our students that, hey, there's an art school, you can go into that school. But I mean, before that, it has to start smaller. And I think that putting us into different schools and giving the information and having the children start writing that information is going to help preserve it before we can get to the point of actually having our first very own art university.
Excellent. So now we want to move to our another polling question. And Sadie and Ella, I want you to just hold your thoughts a bit for me, because we'll be opening the mic again. But at this time, what we want to do is to take a quick poll from you all as to what you think of in 2045. Now, remember, we're in 2020, and artists are visionary people as well. So we're saying to you, do you think in 2045, the people of Belize and in the world will be better off, worse off than today, or the same as today, considering all that we have just discussed as it relates to the world of art and the world of the creative industry? Do you think in 2045, the people in Belize and in the world will be worse off, will be better off, or will be the same? Because once we start talking about where we want to be, a lot of what you're talking about is what we need to do to get to where we want to be. And we've been hearing it coming at us, and it's just exciting to listening to how broad and deep and diverse the art world is and the creative industry is. So let's talk about, do you think in 2045, the people in Belize and in the world will be better off, worse off than today, or the same as today? Because whatever your voting is, we are then going to start look at what it is then that we need to do in the future to make Belize and the global space a place where people want to live and a place where people want to be. At the end of the day, it's about how we shape the future, and your role as artists and in the creative industry is how you shape the future, particularly as it relates to the world of the artists and the world of the creative industry. So what we're seeing is that a majority of people have optimism and hope that we will be better off. Some are saying we'll be worse off, and there are others who are saying there will be the same. So it seems the better off hope, optimism is there, and that is great. Some people are saying we'll be the same, and others are saying that we are going to be worse off. And based on then what you are now voting, we now want to start talk about priority actions to get to where we need to be. And because Saidi and Ella had up there made a note, I'm going to ask Saidi and Ella, Saidi first, then Ella, to start talking about what are some of these priority actions we need to do in the future. We've spoken about earlier, if you recall, what it is we need to do today, now, immediately. Now, when we talk immediate, we talk within the next year or so. What is it we need to do now? And then we need to now start talking about what we need to create that world, that, to use Ilona's word, that ecosystem, that landscape, so that that enabling environment, so that the artists can flourish, can function, can unleash their potential in all areas. I've listened to the performance artists, the visual arts, the writing, the painting, the dancing, the singing, the music. I mean, art is just so wide and diverse. So we need to now start talking about what are some of these actions we need to happen in the future. So Saidi, we're now, we want to hear from you, and we'll be voting in a short while. The poll is already starting to go up. Saidi and Ella, I think you were the two that said you wanted to speak a while ago. Saidi?
As well, if there's anyone that would like to speak, please do unmute your mic so I can take note.
Yes, Zana is taking, so you just have to unmute, and Zana is going to let us know who wants to speak. So Saidi?
Right. First, I wanted to make a point. Aside from this, I suppose it blends into this eventually, but I found that from working with people, they need to see a tangible connection to other areas for them to buy into anything. And I am on the committee and the board for Belmopan Active Youths, and we deal with a lot of troubled youths. And something that I've seen in the Caribbean, and I wish it were incorporated here in the future, is the concept of art therapy. Now, when we speak of art therapy, it's a blended therapeutic practice where you incorporate the arts with troubled youth, and through their expression, they get to express, not using word, maybe they write it, not using word, but through their expression, they are coping and dealing with their trauma. And Belize, unfortunately, for such a small country, has a lot of troubled youth, and the arts can help them. And pushing this idea or promoting this idea that the arts, the entire field of the arts can possibly help in therapy of these for these troubled youths is something that is very tangible and will pull in all of these artists. Once they're willing, they can help and help to sustain your future, because you cannot sustain what we're talking about here without incorporating all of your youth, and you cannot do that without recognizing that you
They left us. They seem to have lost you, Saidi.
That is something that can be used in the future to sustain the arts. So that's one tangible thing. The second one for this particular question is, many artists have started the conversation per district, where they got together and they started a conversation, they started an organization. But because they didn't have the relevant push, they need artists are sometimes they start, they stop, they start, they stop. So they need a management kind of an organization. And so to start from district by district and then pull it into one national movement, I think that would make it a little bit more manageable. So have an art community in Cayo, have an art community in Toledo, there isn't already one, but make it more prominent, make it more, have it produce pieces and promote themselves. So I think you start from the districts and then you pull it into one national, and then you can have a more sustainable our community in the future. But I really would like to see art therapy as one of the things to the future, one of the solutions.
Excellent, thanks, Heidi. And I think one of the areas you mentioned the whole issue of that art therapy. And if you recall, one of the major issues in Belize and a global mega trend as well is violence and the increase of violence, whether it's within the communities or whether it's through violence that is caused by war and conflict and so on and so forth. So that is so linking to that. Then we have, so we want to hear from Ella. It was Ella, yes, Ella?
Yes. I wish we had hours and hours to talk about this because I love everyone's points, to be honest. I agree with everyone's points. And I just quickly wanted to say, a few things that I think Sadie was actually the one who mentioned to actually creating an actionable, task list. The UN can potentially create that list and encourage the governments, not force, but encourage the different governments, including, for example, the government of Belize, to support the arts, and not just the artists, but people's relationship with the arts. Because if you want to sell your art in Belize, you need people who are interested in arts. And currently, I don't think there are a lot of people who value arts as much as art should be valued. And also, I also think that it's important to develop a long-lasting and sustainable, not just one, but several sustainable projects that actually aid people in the arts. I think it was mentioned several times, but I want to add that it's important to base it on actual ethnographic and statistic research to know what people need. Because very often there is a project that is working perfectly in Europe, but it's not going to work in Belize. And so we really need to go into, and that's when other disciplines that are also neglected come into play, when you have to hire, ethnographers, you have to hire researchers who actually work in the different areas, who engage with the people and who know what the problem is, just like this talk, right? So those kind of projects, and they need to be based on real information and actual real need, which I think is very important. And also it's important to support a variety of private and independent institutions. So that, I think some of you raised the issue that, the government doesn't necessarily, or governmental institutions, through whatever reason, they don't necessarily support every project, even though a certain project might be useful or might be worth trying out or might be worth running. So if the UN could also support non-governmental institutions, non-governmental or private projects, provide more funding and actually make an effort to see these projects and seek out these projects and support these projects, that would give a variety of initiatives, a variety of opportunities for the people who might seek help through whichever media. And I just want to say two things very, very quickly. So the first of all, I think it was mentioned through these conversations that art is really cultural identity. Art is everywhere. And one of the things that our organization actually does, our whole motto, to be honest, is that arts and culture can actually provide, resilience to people. We support creative and cultural businesses because when people, for example, artists or artisans, they create products, they use traditional techniques, right? So by making sure that people see the value in the traditional techniques that they use, we conserve that technique, because the younger generation will see that their parents can make a living out of these traditional artistic techniques. And also you will start to learn about your culture, where did that technique come from. You will learn about nature, you will learn about how most of these techniques are sustainable ecologically as well as economically and culturally. So supporting that, and to through the arts encourage cultural conservation, the safeguarding of intangible heritage, that is also very important, which is what our organization does. And also regarding arts careers, there is a way to diversify the products. You don't have to only sell paintings. You can teach painting online, right? You don't have to, you can diversify your products, and for careers, you can combine arts with a lot of areas, a lot of disciplines in a lot of area of life. You can combine arts with tech, right? To develop aesthetically pleasing websites. That is a whole branch. You can provide arts with marketing, right? The marketers and advertisers, they need people in the arts. They need creative people. You can combine arts with branding. So art doesn't necessarily have to stand alone. Same with, music, and not just necessarily visual arts, but any kind of art. It doesn't have to stand alone. So I think one of the career paths that can be promoted to people is how you can combine these artistic and creative skills with other high demand skills and positions like tech or marketing or international, anything basically. So I think just combining it is also important. It gives a pathway to people, I guess.
A pathway, a career pathway. So now we have a polling question that we want you to start looking at. What should be the future priorities and actions to address these challenges? Now, having said that, we also have a few other people who wish to have a few words. We have Jemuel. Jemuel, are you with us?
Yes, I'm still here.
All right ahead, Jemuel, then Kim. And in the meantime, Zana will put in the link to the survey for us, and we can then start to vote on that survey. So Jemuel, go ahead.
Thank you. So what I am thinking is that, we need more, I would like to use the word infiltration. We need infiltration of people of interest into the pockets that already exist. Someone mentioned that there are small organizations, maybe they need some help with management. When it comes to poetry, spoken word, slam poetry, and those sort of things that I am involved in Belize, there are pockets of and spaces that are already there in Belize. And so we need to find a way, there needs to be a way where we can bring those pockets together to create a national identity for poetry. And of course, all the other disciplines can do the same thing, that we create this national identity for the different forms of expression. So what we need is, we need people to find these pockets and see what they're doing and find the way to extrapolate that to a national identity. Let me give you an example. We have artists, poets, authors right now who are attending, different fests regionally and going towards globally. And it's like nobody really knows about it. How do you not know that this person from Belize is going to an art fest here, there, everywhere, but you don't hear it on the news. A few years ago, a group of us we collaborated with Crea Guatemala. We had a meeting where we came together as artists, poets, and we went over there, and it was largely uncovered in Belize. So this is what I'm saying, that we need, where something is happening, someone of interest needs to inject themselves there to find out what's going on, so you can extrapolate those ideas, those events, so that we can create this national identity of artistic expression. That's one of the solutions I do believe that can, in the immediate future and in the further down the road, bring us to where we want to be.
Excellent. Thanks, Jemuel. Great contribution. Now, what I want to ask, I have 5 people lined up to speak.
Hey, can anybody hear me? Hello?
Kim, Kirkland, Lester, Musa, and Ilona.
Hello, can anybody hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Could you just hold a moment? Hold a moment.
All right.
Who is it? Just hold a moment. Hold a moment. Yes.
That was Musa, by the way.
All right. Oh, you're in, Musa. You're finally in. Okay, just hold on, Musa. We're going to go to you because we haven't heard from you at all. So we need to hear from you. So just let me speak to this poll, and then we're going to go back to the open mics. I love that word. It's like I'm part of the spoken word, you know, and as I go to the mic, you know. So the question then, what should be the future priority actions to address these challenges? And so some of you have already been talking a lot about some of these solutions that you're saying needs to happen. You spoke about some that needed to happen earlier, and now we want to talk about what needs to happen in the future. Already we're seeing access to online platforms. So you're talking about technology, and technology is one of the fastest growing component in the whole mega trend, digital technology. But of course, always remember, we always have to look at opportunities and risk, where things like technology is concerned, and any other opportunity and solution we're looking at. We're looking at infrastructure, youth development, international exposure, online learning support, creating a market, open dialogue. So keep putting them in the, keep voting, so that we can try to identify 2 or 3 key priority actions that are coming from the artists that we can document and record and say, this is what the artists are saying needs to happen in the future. While we're doing that, Musa, you can now go ahead.
Okay. Hi, afternoon, everybody. Sorry about the last 2 trials. Those are failures. I think I had an issue with my my audio and the mic. But yeah, my name is Musa Shahid, and I represent Creole culture here in my nation primarily. And apart from that, I was given a title as Youth Artist Ambassador for Carifesta and a member of the Interim Festival Directorate with a tenure of 4 years, which has been extended to 2022 due to the fact that COVID is here. So I listened to the entire conversation so far, the dialogue, and it is very wonderful. Everybody has been saying stuff that I've wanted to say, so I'm kind of glad for that we're all on the same page. I just have a quick issue to address when it pertains to the spectrum of the arts itself. It is a taboo word, it's a taboo conversation in this country, and everyone in this panel here could attest to that. In 2019, as my first job as a Youth Artist Ambassador, I was sent to the first meetings I ever took part in outside of Belize pertaining to arts. And I was told of my role and what I'm supposed to do. Basically, I'm supposed to come in my country and teach the artist spectrum in Belize the importance of arts and the importance of Belize's participation at the Caribbean Festival of the Arts. Belize's participation at the Caribbean Festival of the Arts has been very mediocre compared to all Caribbean countries over the past 25 years, 30 years at Carifesta, and the proof is there, and I had to witness that in my 3-day meeting in March of last year. I came back to Belize and I tried to rally a body of artisans in all the facets I could have thought of, graphic, poetry, dancing, storytelling, and even culinary. I love food. And basically, they all listened and it went in one ear and went through the next like thin air. And I don't know if it's because they have been in the basically everybody I spoke to is older than me. I'm only 26 years old, right? And everyone I've spoke to basically indulge in the arts for maybe 20 years, 30 years, 10 years, 5 years, more than me. right? And they listened and are like, oh, this is just a naive boy who has no clue of what this country is all about when it comes to the arts. And so I went home and I did my research and I write up a nice, beautiful lineup of artisans to go and represent Belize. I even put in the Puck to Puck championship players from Belize, the Mayans. That would have been a spectacle. That would have been a sight at the Car Festa. You know, nobody else has Mayans in this entire region like that. And we host the champions of the game, the Puck to Puck game. That game is centuries old. You know, I put that in the lineup. I put for them to send Miss Myrna Manzanares to do Creole storytelling. I put for Lord Rayburn to be sent to do a live and lunch performance if they don't want to put him on the grand stage and the main performance for Belize 6-hour night period that we would share with 2 other countries. So you get like 3 hours to showcase different talents from your country. That's a lot of time, a lot of time. All of us as artists know you only need 2 minutes. That is a lot of time. Belize sent 1 band, and that was a Creole band, and that band only could have represented the Creole culture. Instead, they decided to send a nice band to represent all cultures. My point here is, I cannot blame the government anymore for our issue. I have sat down this entire 2020, and I have realized that our issue is us as a people. We as the Belizean people, we stifle one another. And it is a bad disease that we have to work on. We lack support. I look at Miss Sandy Bradshaw post every day. She posts something and I try my best to either share or like the post or love it or something as a incentive of support and appreciation for her art. When we were in Carfesta, Ilona Smiling and Miss Kelly took a beating as curators and as poets. And I witnessed that firsthand, being that I am an ambassador and I was not supposed to be at our pavilion looking after our arts. My job was supposed to be at the youth village. And at the youth village, I was supposed to take a delegation of youths to represent the Belizean arts through youth, showing how we are working towards preserving our artistry as a nation. I went with no one but myself. I wasn't even given a subsidy per diem. I wasn't even given per diems. I was left out there with the wolves and the sharks and everything, all alone with my IFD members. When I told them the story, people got teary eyes, people chipped in like a little chum bucket, up until all of us as IFD members got our per diems. But everybody as IFD members got their per diems from their country. I took a beating for a week. Thank you to Miss Karen. She fed me 2 nights, you know. Man like Richard Kiao look after me. Man like my brother from Dangriga, he did a very good job representing us for the Garifuna culture, Josh Arana. And we took a lot of strain and we tried our best to represent, but we needed 5 curators for the arts because it's a huge event and we only had 1. We needed a lot more youths to be in the youth village. We needed more artisans to represent the Garifuna culture, the Creole culture. No one was there for Mayan. No one was there for East Indian. No one was there for Mestizo. We basically looked down on the arts. And like I said, when I started off speaking, that speaking of arts and preservation here in this country is like taboo. In 2020, COVID-19, the National Creole Council has went defunct. Over the last 4 months, I've been on a personal crusade trying to gather up a group of people to work with me to basically administer and build a new body of board members to look after the National Creole Council and really make it a national council, because there's only 1 outlet, but yet it's a National Creole Council. It makes no sense. So I see Miss Kelly here, Miss Ilona Smiling, Miss Kim. Miss Kim is a very smart person. She's a part of Niche for the past, I don't know, among years. These are people that would be ideal to try to come on board and take over the National Creole Council to help and guide us. These are priorities right here, actions that should address these challenges, you know what I mean? So basically, I believe that we as young people, we have a certain energy, but we're alone. Me personally, I'm alone. If I was with the Garifuna culture, I'm proud, I'm happy, I'm alive every day. But with the Creole culture, all year round, and we celebrate nothing. You know, we only have the 1st of June where we celebrate the 14 men that make Belize what it is today. But it's not a public thing. It's not a national thing. Everybody doesn't know about it. Like I said, I'm 26 years old, and I feel like everything that I'm saying right now, I'm the only 26 years old person in this entire country that knows what he's speaking out right now. When it comes to the Creole culture, I cannot swear that if I die tomorrow, there's another person readily that will take up my place and preserve the portion of drumming, the portion of storytelling. If I ask right now, what is Sambai? There's other people like Ilona who could answer, Miss Ivory Kelly who could answer, Miss Kim who could answer, but the others, maybe they might not know what I'm speaking of. If I speak of Sadungo, like what Chriselle talked about of the dance just now, nobody knows these things. Nobody knows these things. So the preservation of arts and culture is vital. I took a pedagogy class last year. That I was told that it's important for me to know certain things, and I said, you know what, I need this, and I need this certification so that I could go to 3 or 4 different schools and teach my Creole Heritage program. I designed a Creole Heritage program, you know, and
Thank you, I want to say if you could just wrap it up and help us get some priority action.
Basically, there was a group of us that took the pedagogy classes, including grown persons like Ms. Charlotte Perote, who was a part of the classes. We had Jayalagas. Nobody received their pedagogy license, so henceforth, no one was able to go into any school and teach any type of creative, expressive arts. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Musa. That was quite a lot that you shared with us, but it really shares the experience of the artist through your lens. And that is so very important to this conversation, because from the onset, we keep saying that this conversation is trying to engage what we would call the groupings of people that have traditionally not have been part of this conversation and this dialogue. And it's very important for us to gather out of this these sessions, what are these future priority actions that you want to see? Because these are the things that we are going to document in our report, and basically saying these are the areas that the artists are saying that they need support, and these ought to be their priority actions. So we're going to move now from the future priority actions. I know Kim, Kirtland, Lester, and Ilona, you have a few things more to say. We'll open up back just a little while, a few minutes from now, because we're beginning this winding down process. And I'm glad to see some of the things that came out of the polling that we just did. And so we want to then start talking about cooperation, because if you notice, we're saying this is UN75. And UN75 has ignited this great conversation globally, and basically saying what it is that the future that we want to create, as well as are we on track with this future, and what are the action that we need to bridge the gap. So you all have made this great contribution as to say, these are the issues that are confronting us. These are our key challenges. But you all have also been talking about opportunities. You're seeing and you're sharing what can be some of the opportunities and what can be some of the solutions. So our next polling question then will be looking at the whole concept of global cooperation that has come out and amplified in quite a number of your conversations. So our polling question for you is global cooperation through the United Nations vital to deal with the challenges of today and the future? So we want you to answer that, because that becomes very key, particularly when you keep hearing about funding opportunities, when you keep hearing about collaboration to ensure that the work of Belize is exposed, when you keep hearing about Belizeans getting opportunities to travel, to share their work, to build their capacity, to have access to opportunities. I think it was Ilona who mentioned the concept that there's quite a lot of our artwork that is not in Belize, and the fact that you need cooperation to do so, but even cooperation between countries as well as between sectors. So the question then is global cooperation through the United Nations vital to deal with the challenges of today and the future. And I want, if you are unable to connect to the link that has been posted, I simply ask that you put the answer in the chat, because we are going to pick up the answer out of the chat as well. And so already we're beginning to see, so far, everyone is saying yes, that global cooperation through the United Nations is vital to dealing with the challenge of today and the future. I'm going to ask one other question, and then we're going to open up the mic for some comments again from, I see Sandy put in as well, and I had still waiting Kim, Kirtland, Lester, and Ilona. So we're going to go to another polling question. And because we're talking about the United Nations, and we're saying that looking at how the United Nations can help promote and propel and work in partnership with the government of Belize, and as some of you mentioned, with civil society organization, with the private sector. And so in terms of moving the agenda, someone started the conversation earlier and spoke about strategic planning and setting out actionable points that we need and action points that we need, things that we need to get done. But if we're going to work with the United Nations and there's going to be a collaboration, what we would want to hear from you is, how would you describe the United Nations? Give us one word in which you would describe the United Nations. One word we're asking, that strength, peacekeeping from someone said ineffective. Well, we need to then start thinking about how we can make it effective. Visionary, global, I see unity. And these are great words that you're describing, the UN, because you're talking about collaboration, hope, historical. So these are some words that are coming out. It says unbalanced, vital. So we see historical, we see influencer. Well, I see controlling, collaboration. So I see vital, collaboration, hope, influencer, historical, strength. Visionary keeps jumping out, which is so good, visionary. But I also see the ineffective and the unbalanced. And so we want to also then talk about how the United Nations can help to manage some of these challenges that we spoke about. All that you all have said before. And so when we open up the mic now, back again, where we will start with Kim, we have Kirkland, Lester, Ilona, and I think I see Sandra also said she wanted to speak. We see someone said universal in terms of a word to describe the United Nations. I see bureaucratic. So that came out as well, bureaucratic. So those are words that you're saying how you would describe the United Nations. Now we want to start hear from you. We want to start hear from you how the United Nations can better manage these challenges. And that's another poll that we're going to put up. We're now going to open the mics. And for Kim, starting with Kim, then Kirkland, then Lester, then Ilona, and then Sunday, because these are the ones I already have. We're going to ask you then to start talking about how is it that the United Nations can better manage these same challenges that you have been highlighting and elevating in this conversation, and bringing out and saying that these are immediate actions, these are immediate priority actions, and you were saying these are future priority actions. Let's now start talking about how the United Nations can help to deliver on these priority actions and future actions. And basically then it's saying, how can the United Nations help us to better manage these challenges? So you can start, you can put them in the chat, and then we're opening up the lines now. Kim?
Yeah, I had wanted, I think my comments would have been more pertaining to the immediate actions. But
go right ahead.
It can apply to this as well. I wanted to say something about funding for private entities, and that includes also the councils as well, the Garifuna Council, the Creole Council, and that's everything from to ensure that they have capacity building, but also that they are able to weather this very difficult period. I know several art galleries that act as a haven for visual artists, and they are struggling to keep their head above water because artists are producing, they are innovating and they're creating. So I have no doubt that the adult artists, it's my belief that artists are resilient by nature, and we know how to pivot. It's a part of it's how we are wired creatively.
Okay.
Aside from that, now I wanted to say that I think one of the priority actions is not only supporting the adult artists, but we must have a focus on youth development. Children and youth need the expressive arts. I think Sadie was the one that spoke of art therapy. But it does not even have to be in a straightforward or come and get some art therapy. By virtue of being a child being involved in the expressive arts, especially during this time, during COVID-19, they are going to experience a therapeutic effect of being in the expressive arts. So we need to make sure that children and youth are accessing the expressive arts, and that is like what I said, linked back to supporting the private communities. I think Sadie was the one that said why we don't have an art institute. We may not have an art institute for visual arts, but we have numerous private music schools. We have numerous dance academies, dance teachers that are teaching and they need the support and capacity building during this time, to be able to continue to do what they're doing, especially where children and youth are concerned. And I wanted to just mention that we need to help artists and cultural workers bridge the technology gap. We need to get them online. I think somebody else had touched on this as well. They need to be able to access online platforms, and they need business development. They need to see how they can diversify, how that they can develop what they have, and find a new way during COVID-19 to market or to slightly adapt or modify what they already have and make it work. So they need some business development as well. So for me, those would be the priority actions.
Excellent. Those are great, great contributions. And let me just read a few before we go to Lester. So the question then is, how can the United Nations better manage these challenges, open opportunities for innovative cooperation, seeing build a platform to share all art forms. There needs to be a conscious effort of collaboration through the government to ensure that artists actively involved. Ambassadors are needed to come as far as the ground and local level to see what is. We have a lot that exists and more spaces may need to be identified. And there is, sustainable projects based on research that reveal real problems. So the next person then, Kirkland?
Right here.
Yes, the floor is yours.
A summary of everything that ran through my mind. Musa raised an important point that triggered a thought, and also Chriselle. We need a conscious effort of collaboration as artists, because we have a lot of artists who are highly skilled, right? They have the talent, but we tend to want to see each other as competition when we're not competitors. We should be working together to build our communities and our country. Artists on a whole, we need to be more, I don't want to use the word aggressive, but we need to put ourselves out there and participate more and share our experience more. And my outlook for the next 45 years, I mean, for UN100, when I look back at 20 years ago, when I first came into the education system, there were a lot of, I didn't see as much participation as I see today. A lot of young people who are involved in art more today than used to be, which gives me a positive outlook when I look at what tomorrow will bring, the future, that I expect that there'll be a lot more participation, and then the UN can play a big role an understanding and appreciation of what work needs to get done. Because anybody can be at the top, but if that person does not understand what are the issues, what needs to get done, what are some of the solutions that we can work with to create a market for artists, to create a training for teachers in this area, to have students and artists exposed, young people exposed. So these things, even though there are a web of different factors, but then we need that hub where everything can spread out and
you left us, Lester.
Hello?
Hello.
Sorry about the car.
Sorry, Kirkland, sorry. All right, Kirkland, you left us a little while and you came back.
Oh my, all right. I thought I guess I was talking to myself.
All right,
I said,
cool. No problem.
You need to have hope on whoever is in charge, because I know the government has to be involved.
Yeah.
That's a hierarchy, and that is where a lot of the issues are not addressed, because the person who should be the one responsible and have the influence must need to understand what needs to be done, what are some solutions, and get the art community to come together and get that exposure the training teachers need, the exposure students need, and also the active involvement of those who love art. And one thing I always, my last point, one thing I always point out is a lot of parents, when they see that their sons or daughters, they love art, they get frazzled, they get anxious because they feel like they want to be an artist. I always tell my students, not because you love art and want to do art means that you have to go and get older and be an artist, be an art teacher, or follow a career in art. Because art helps us in three main ways. It helps us with personally, in shaping who we are in terms of attitude and behavior and outlook and character. Art helps in terms of our skill level that we need in other areas of studies, education, eye for observation, creativity in our writing, in English, in lit. So it's integrated, it helps with skills in terms of artistic intelligence. All right, that's me right there. Thank you.
Thank you, Kirkland. Lester, and can you please continue to put into the survey, how can the United Nations better manage these challenges? We see collaboration between artists within and outside the country to create a stronger nation, umbrella organization, and by injecting knowledge and funding to create sustainability within the country. So we have Lester, then Ilona. Lester, because we're winding down now. Lester?
Yeah, I won't be too long. Thanks, first of all, for allowing me to be here. I've appreciated all the comments and everything from everyone. I think most of things have already been said. I am 26 myself, like Musa, and I'm an artist. I do film, I do poetry, and stuff like that. I went to Toronto to study, and it was interesting for me because growing up here, I didn't quite fit in. I didn't quite feel as if though I was able to express myself to the fullness of what I felt I had to share, simply because the culture is a bit stifling towards the arts. A lot of people have said it, we kind of need to push just a respect and an appreciation for art as a whole. I think we consume a lot of art from the outside, and it's a part of our daily discussions, what the Avengers are doing, or what's going on with Game of Thrones and stuff like that. But on the outside, they have their major, their mainstream art, but there's also indie art. Belize is kind of too small with terms of to have indie, right? Because I think Miss Stephanie Darker brought it up earlier, where there's the main stuff the Belizeans are hot and into, as far as like, you know, the top Caribbean trends or the top outside trends. But in other places, like you have indie artists that are able to garner quite a following simply because of the bigger volume of people. And, you know, I had it when I was in Toronto, like I'm there and everybody's, you know, trying to be an artist and everyone's trying to do something. And for a lot of them, you know, they go to online. You know, YouTube was an incredible space for the arts when that first launched off. Now there's like different things with the algorithm that make it harder for people to enter that space and also and you know, gain popularity and relevance on YouTube. But you know, there are still people on the outside that are trying to make it and are being successful on YouTube, because on the outside they understand, you know, the power of art as far as marketing. Technology has come so insanely far when it comes to art. And with COVID and everything, I believe that it's been very evident, like people haven't been able to go outside, and the only catharsis that they've had for their own feelings, you know, because art is all about feeling and art is all about expression. The only catharsis that they've had for their own feelings was to go and just watch Netflix or, you know, be on YouTube for hours or TikTok for hours. It's tough because, like I said, like it's not easy for us in Belize to get on these platforms. Look at Spotify and Apple Music, for instance. Like we're not even allowed on those platforms. So like in terms of how the UN can help, as far as like putting pressure on the gatekeepers, you know what I mean, to kind of like allow Belizean artists the opportunity to put their work out there on the global scale. But, you know, inside the community itself, like there needs to be an understanding of the importance of art, and there needs to be a softening of minds. You know, we need to kind of like let people know that, no, because I think I had my own thoughts and stuff like that that I tried to express as a kid, and eventually I stopped expressing them because I realized that nobody cared, you know. And or if I said something that was a little bit too out there to like, oh, this something wrong with you know, we kind of not, we need to like stop having things be so taboo, because like we're watching in outside media, we're watching all types of crazy stuff, you know, outlandish stuff. And, you know, outside they're done with that. The outlandish is boring to them outside, you know, but for us, from our own locals, like it's still taboo, and it's insane that it is. I feel like I'm gonna try to do my own part. I have my own camera. I have my own friends that are, you know, artists and divergent thinkers, but I do feel like they themselves feel stifled. I had a friend that like I told him about this and he wasn't in the least bit interested, to be honest. He said he prefers the shadows, you know. And that's unfortunate. That's unfortunate for me growing up, that like I didn't feel acknowledged until I left. And I think there's a lot of artists that feel the same way, like they're not going to be recognized until they're out of here. And that's not really okay.
Great, thanks for that, Lester. And I think we have Ilona wrapping up.
All right.
Thanks so much, Lester, for that contribution. We also, as we beginning the process of closing off, there is a UN75 online survey that we're going to ask you to click on and fill out. It only takes a minute. Zana is going to put it in the chat for us so that we can always click on it. And it, like I said, it takes 1 minute for you to do. Ilona, I think you wanted to wrap up and say a few. Okay, can you?
Yeah. I just have a couple points that I wanted to go over. The first one was the strategic planning, I guess you could say, that I would like to see the UN do. I would love if they could help funding different institutions that could address each issue that we spoke about here today. Um, if you've noticed, every one of us have different experiences, and they're all valid issues that need to be addressed. However, from my past experience, especially as the curator at the museum, there are so many issues that need to be addressed all at once, and I am the only person addressing all those issues, which is impossible. However, if we had different institutions that are specific to addressing artistic needs and growth, we would be able to move along faster. So maybe the UN could help with the development of a photography gallery where photographers could go there and specifically there to help develop their photography skills or showcase their work. Maybe we have a gallery that deals specifically with art installation, which is another area of art that we have not delved into as yet in Belize. I think to put one institution above all and assume that this one institution will be able to do it is setting ourselves up for failure. This also brings me to another question that everyone keeps bringing up. Who do we think will take up these spaces if it's not for us? You know, us always trying to say that someone else needs to do it, someone else needs to do it, hampers us more than anything else. So we really and truly need to work together and say, you know what, this is something that I want to do, so I am going to establish it. And that is where I feel the UN needs to come in and say, okay, you know what, maybe Chriselle has her dance and she's specializing in Creole dance. The funding that we're going to give Chriselle for this institution is so that she could go around and teach everyone about Creole dance. But it wouldn't just be about dance, it would also be about learning how to create the Creole dresses. So that in itself needs funding, and that generates movement within the fashion design department. Again, another sector of art. If you have the funding to pay for this, it will be developed. So I would love to see the UN do that. It goes without saying that would be for film as well as what Lester was saying. I don't think that Belize doesn't have the demographic for indie film. We do. I am an indie kid myself. I love film. I've been watching film since I was young, and like Stephanie, my music tastes were very different. Anybody who knows me knows that I used to be that rock goth kid, but I was not alone. We had the crowd. We just did not have a space. I think there was only one space that we could go to, but you know, this is what I mean. Like it is there, but we just don't have the space for it. So if let's say like maybe if the UN said they had a funding for an alternative space for me to do whatever I want, I could go with my plan, write it, and get the funding. That would help us to have safe spaces for different niches across the country, you know, not just Belize. Yeah, so in the film industry, if we have a space for film, it wouldn't just be about going outside and filming. You have to think about the effects department. Again, someone who's studying graphic design would be able to come back home and say, I'm going to work to this film department because they need someone who's going to do special effects. The same thing with the makeup industry in film. So again, this is generating income and growth within the economy. So yeah, it is a two-way street, but unless we as well are willing to take up these spaces, it's never going to happen. One thing I really want the government help on would be tax reductions when artists are trying to sell their artwork outside of Belize. I once had someone interested in a painting of mine, but the painting was so big that it was going to cost $2,000 for me to ship it. I lost that sale because the painting was about $2,000. So the person was going to end up paying $4,000 for something that was only $2,000. I also had an issue with that when I had a women in art, and a Belizean artist who was abroad was trying to send the painting to me. The post office wanted me to pay $500 to release it because the painting was worth $500. And I did not have that in my budget at all. So I had to ship the painting back. So to me, things like that's where the government comes in. Like who in their right mind charges $500 for an artwork? The post guy said that it's because they need to, if the girl was going to sell the painting, they needed to make a payment off of it. What? Oh, what?
I heard that. We heard that.
That is completely ridiculous.
Yeah.
So when it comes to tax for the cultural creative sector, I need the government to be more lenient. I mean, I've seen them write tax off for other things that has nothing to do with the growth. Like, you mean to say artists can't get a libre? Come on, man.
And I think that goes back to the point of the enabling environment that we've been hearing about throughout this conversation. That there is the enabling environment for tourism, there's the enabling environment for agriculture, there's the for so many other areas of our country and our development, but this enabling environment for the artists are not there. And I think perhaps this is where this conversation becomes so very important, because one of the guiding principles of the United Nations happens to be leave no one behind. And so throughout this consultation, we've been making every effort to try to raise and elevate and amplify the voices of groupings that traditionally their voices were not heard. So we're just after 4, we started this conversation, hopefully that saying, well, at least we were saying it's normally an hour and a half, and we actually went into 2 hours, and that says a lot about the world that you operate in, as to use your terminology, the landscape ecosystem, the many issues that are confronting artists in these times of COVID-19, in times of flooding, in times of rising inequality and crime and violence. And we've seen in different ways how art intersect in every aspect of every issue that I have, and there's so much more, from digital technologies to shifting demographics and so on and so forth. And so what you all have contributed, let me say we're very thankful. Zana, I don't know if you want to say a few closing words. Zana?
Yes, Miss Carolyn, thanks so much for that. And thank you guys for the really great conversation. I've been taking some notes from my end, and I've actually taken a few highlights of your names. This is something near and dear to me and something I wanted to do for a while. I came into the Belize UN system this year with the resident coordinator's office. It's a new office that only has been in operation for 1 year. And it's really to oversee all the UN agencies in Belize. So we call ourselves the United Nations country team, where yes, every agency has their mandate. I would say UNESCO is more so for the indigenous cultures, languages, and some of those topics you brought up, which I will be sharing this conversation with them. But as the communication focal point from RCO, I really would like to develop a media center. And when I say media center, it's basically an online space where we get to have new vendors. So artists, media persons, persons that would create different items that we can then go to, because there has been a lot of campaigns, a lot of programs that we needed poets, we needed writers, we needed painters, musicians for, that we didn't really have anyone to reach out to. So creating a new contact base, a new space for us to engage, and updating that as much as possible throughout the years that we now operate would be the way we go. So I'll be reaching out. You can definitely reach out to me. I'll leave my email in the chat space. And again, hopefully this is not the last conversation we all have. And thank you so much for your open and honest views of where we're at in 2020. So everyone be safe. Do take care, especially in this COVID-19 pandemic.
Thank you, Zan. Encouraging words. And you see, we're bringing the voice of the artists to the United Nations, and we're hopeful and optimistic that this conversation will lead to a Belize where you all have contributed in terms of shaping the future of Belize, as well as the global space. I want to thank you and give you a quick reminder, if you haven't taken the UN Online survey, please do so. We want Belize numbers to keep growing and to let them know that this is this great country that has great potential to unleash. And with partnership with the United Nations, we certainly can. Thanks again. And I'm reiterating what Zana says, be safe, wear your mask, wash your hands, stick to your 6 feet, and don't go out unless you really, really have to. Thanks a lot. See you all, and thank you again. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Appreciate it. Bye.
Goodbye, everyone.